Row 23 had become a battleground at 30,000 feet. A small boy's desperate cries pierced the cabin air, while passengers shot daggers with their eyes. His exhausted mother tried everything, her hands moving in silent language he couldn't seem to understand. Then a tiny voice behind them whispered something that would change everything. Victoria Chen had conquered boardrooms across 3 continents. Her investment firm managed billions, her decisions moved markets, and her reputation commanded respect from the world's most powerful executives. But none of that mattered now, buckled into seat 23B, watching her 4-year-old son Lucas dissolve into inconsolable distress. The flight from Los Angeles to Boston had started normally enough. Lucas, born profoundly deaf, usually traveled well. Victoria had packed his favorite snacks, downloaded his preferred videos, and arranged their seats away from the engines where vibrations might upset him. She'd done everything right, followed every routine they'd established over dozens of flights before. But something was different today. 20 minutes after takeoff, Lucas began crying, his small hands frantically signing words Victoria couldn't quite make out through his panic. She signed back, asking what was wrong, what he needed, but his responses made no sense. The pressure change had disoriented him completely, and their usual communication had fractured into desperate, misunderstood gestures between mother and terrified child. The stares began almost immediately. A businessman in 22C kept turning around, his irritation carved into every line of his face. Across the aisle, a woman loudly complained to the flight attendant, suggesting that children who couldn't behave properly shouldn't be allowed to fly. Victoria felt each glance like a physical blow, but she kept her focus on Lucas, trying every calming technique they'd practiced. She pulled out his tablet, but he pushed it away. She offered water, crackers, his stuffed elephant, everything met with the same panicked rejection. His hands moved wildly, signing phrases she'd never seen before, his face red and streaked with tears. Other passengers began whispering, their judgment filling the recycled air like poison. "Can't you control him?" someone muttered from behind. "Some people shouldn't travel with kids," another voice added. A flight attendant approached, her smile professionally sympathetic but her eyes betraying uncertainty. "Ma'am, is there anything we can do to help calm him down? The other passengers are becoming concerned." Victoria wanted to scream at them all. She wanted to explain that her son wasn't misbehaving, that he was scared, and couldn't communicate what was wrong, that she would give anything to understand what he needed. Instead, she nodded tightly and continued signing to Lucas, her own hands now trembling with frustration and helplessness. The worst part wasn't the stares or the comments. It was watching her brilliant, sweet boy drowning in fear while she, his mother, his translator to the world, couldn't reach him. She'd built an empire from nothing, negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions, but she couldn't comfort her own child. Lucas's cries grew louder, more desperate. His hands clutched at his ears, then at his chest, then reached toward the window, signing something over and over that Victoria couldn't decipher. Around them, the cabin had grown hostile. Several passengers had summoned flight attendants. Someone suggested the pilot should make an emergency landing. Victoria felt her carefully constructed world crumbling at 30,000 feet. Then, cutting through the chaos, came a small voice from row 24. "Excuse me." Victoria turned to see a girl, no more than 7 years old, leaning between the seats. Her brown eyes were serious, focused entirely on Lucas's moving hands. "I think he's saying his elephant fell," the girl signed and spoke simultaneously. "Under the seat. He can't reach it." Victoria's breath caught. She looked down, and there, wedged far beneath the seat in front of them, was Lucas's stuffed elephant, the one he'd had since birth, the one that helped him feel safe in unfamiliar places. In his panic, he'd dropped it during takeoff, and the pressure and noise and confusion had stolen his ability to explain. Victoria reached under the seat, her fingers barely grasping the worn gray fabric. She pulled it free and handed it to Lucas. The effect was instantaneous. His sobs quieted to hiccups, then stopped entirely. He clutched the elephant to his chest, his small body finally relaxing as his mother wrapped him in her arms. The cabin fell silent, but it was a different silence now. Victoria turned to the little girl, tears streaming down her own face, unable to find words for what this child had just done. The girl's name was Emma, and she'd been learning sign language at school for 2 years because her teacher was deaf. What had started as a class requirement had become a passion. She practiced constantly, watched signing videos, and dreamed of becoming an interpreter someday. She'd been watching Lucas's hands, trying to understand, treating it like the puzzle it was. Victoria learned all this during the remainder of the flight, which passed peacefully with Lucas asleep against her shoulder. Emma's parents, initially surprised by their daughter's intervention, watched with quiet pride as Victoria exchanged contact information, making Emma promise to stay in touch. But the story didn't end when the plane landed. Victoria couldn't forget the isolation she'd felt, or the judgment, or the miracle of one child's compassion cutting through it all. Within 6 months, she'd launched a foundation funding sign language education in schools across the country. She partnered with airlines to train flight attendants in basic signs for common needs. She created resources for deaf children and their families navigating a hearing world. Emma became the foundation's youngest ambassador. And Lucas, now 7, travels confidently, his elephant always within reach, living proof that sometimes the smallest voices speak the loudest truths, that compassion requires no age requirement, and understanding can transform everything. What bridges are you willing to build for someone who speaks a different language than yours?